A few weeks ago, I realized something strange. The only thing pulling me out of gaming burnout were roguelites. And that's when it hit me. Maybe roguelites are the last source of real creativity in gaming. They're fast paced, they force you to adapt on the fly, and they give you this wild freedom to build completely broken runs. And the best part, you can play for 30 minutes or for 3 hours and still feel like you experienced something new throughout that time. But to understand why roguelites became this creative lifeline, we need to look at where the genre actually came from. Roguelikes started all the way back in 1980 with this little game called Rogue. On the surface, it looked like any other game from that era. You drop into a dungeon, you fight monsters, you grab loot, and slowly you work your way toward a treasure called the Amulet of Yendor. But unlike modern games, Rogue was completely text-based. You played as a little @ symbol wandering through darkness, discovering the world one character at a time. And that simple, strange setup was the beginning of everything. Because here's the part that separated Rogue from everything else at the time. When you died, that was it. No saves, no checkpoints, no continue from last room. You started over. And to make it even crazier, every time you restarted, the dungeon changed. There was a new layout, new enemies, new items. The game felt familiar, but it never played the same way twice. That mix of randomness, risk, and reinvention became the heartbeat of the entire roguelike genre. A genre where failure isn't the end of the story. It is the story. Fast forward to 2025 and that tiny idea from a 40-year-old game has exploded into one of the most creative spaces in indie gaming. There are something like 1,500 roguelikes released on Steam just this year alone. And what makes that so cool is that every developer brings their own magical twist to the genre. Some focus on fast action, some on super deep strategy, and some embrace pure chaos. And some tell emotional stories in the middle of all the randomness. But despite all those differences, they all share the same beating heart that Rogue created decades ago. And honestly, that's what made me fall in love with the genre as well. It feels alive, it feels creative, it feels like anything can happen. So what actually caused the recent boom of the roguelike genre? What brought forward a forgotten 40-year-old idea all the way back to the front of modern gaming? The biggest reason comes down to one thing: technology. Before the 2010s, the indie scene was tiny. Making a full video game completely on your own was almost impossible. The tools were expensive, the engines were complicated, and unless you were already working at a big studio, you didn't really have a way to build the game you imagined. Even if you somehow did make one, there was no guarantee that anyone would ever play it. But when engines like Unity finally showed up, everything changed. Suddenly, anyone, and I mean literally anyone, could download these professional level tools for free and start building a game from their bedroom. You didn't need a publisher, you didn't need a huge budget. For the first time, creativity in gaming wasn't controlled by big companies. It was accessible.
So just thank you to everybody who contributed. And also, I want to extend a thank to the unsung heroes of this industry, the people who make tutorials on YouTube on how to make a game, because we had no idea how to make a game before. So thank you.
And roguelikes were the perfect match for this new wave of indie developers. They didn't need giant worlds or crazy graphics. What mattered was the design, the creativities, the ideas. One cool mechanic could carry an entire game. And that's why throughout the 2010s and into the 2020s, we started to see this massive explosion of roguelikes and roguelite games that completely redefined the genre. Games like Hades, this fast-paced spin on Greek mythology that blends action and storytelling perfectly. Or Balatro, a poker roguelike that somehow mixes strategy, luck, and absolute chaos into something impossible to stop playing. Or even Returnal, a full-blown AAA roguelike that turns psychological horror and bullet hell combat into a story about reliving your past and dealing with trauma. All totally different games, all built on the same foundation that Rogue started 40 years ago. And all made possible because for the first time, the tools gave creativity room to breathe, and developers took full advantage of it. So what actually makes roguelikes feel so different, and honestly, so special? And to show you what I mean, let's compare two of my favorite PS5 games, Returnal and Spider-Man 2. Both are huge releases, both look incredible, and both got crazy amounts of praise. But creatively, they live in completely different worlds. Returnal was one of the first true PS5 exclusives, and it's easily one of the most ambitious roguelikes we've gotten in years. Every time you play, the world shifts, rooms change, enemies spawn in new ways, item drops are different, nothing stays familiar for long. You're always reacting, you're always adapting, and every run feels like its own story. The game trusts the player to experiment, to embrace the unknown, and honestly, to fail. a lot. Now compare that to Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 is a fantastic game, one of the best superhero stories that we've ever gotten, but the experience is fixed. You're following a path, introductions, rising action, big villain moment, final fight, roll credits. It's cinematic, it's emotional, and it's fun, but everything you do has to fit the story that Insomniac wrote. There's only so much room for creativity because the game has to hit certain beats. It's boxed in, and that's not a bad thing. It's just very different. And this leads into the biggest difference between the two games, the freedom to fail. In Spider-Man 2, if you die, you just respawn a few seconds later, and you keep going. The story doesn't change, the world doesn't react to your new death, you're simply putting the narrative back on its rails. But in Returnal, dying is part of the core experience. Failure isn't just allowed, it's expected. Every death teaches you something new. Enemy patterns, hidden shortcuts, which upgrades are worth grabbing, what weapons you actually like playing with. You get better, not because the game holds your hand, but because you generally learn how to survive this impossible alien world. The more you fail, the more the game opens up. And even after you beat Spider-Man 2, the design experience is basically complete at this point. You can chase trophies, clear the map, swing around for fun, but the journey is over. With Returnal, the game almost feels like it begins once the credit rolls. There are challenge modes, new combinations, harder biomes, and practically infinite room layouts waiting for you. It's a game that keeps reinventing itself long after the story ends. That's the magic of roguelikes. They give developers total freedom to experiment, and they give players an experience that never stops surprising them. And that constant reinvention, that loop of risk, failure, and discovery is exactly why roguelikes have become the most creative space in modern gaming. And this is where the bigger picture really starts to show. Games today aren't less creative because developers stopped caring. It's because the industry has gotten massive. As of 2025, gaming is worth around $190 billion. When that much money is on the line, risk basically gets thrown out of the window. If a big budget game fails, studios close and people lose their jobs. So instead of taking risk on something weird and experimental like Cult of the Lamb, a cozy farming sim mixed with dungeon crawling and cult management, most AAA studios stick to what's safe, what's predictable, what's guaranteed to sell. And that's exactly why roguelikes stand out so much today. So as we wrap up this video, the real question is, how did roguelikes save creativity in gaming? And honestly, the answer is surprisingly simple. They brought back freedom. Freedom for developers to take risks without worrying about billion-dollar budgets or massive sales targets. Freedom for players to experiment, fail, learn, and shape their own experiences instead of being pushed down a fixed path. Freedom for games to be strange, unpredictable, deeply personal, and endlessly replayable in ways that bigger studios rarely attempt anymore. In what genre of games can you go from rebuilding a town after a cosmic disaster to outplaying the house in a chaotic poker roguelike to fighting your way out of the underworld as the son of Hades? These games aren't afraid to be weird. They aren't afraid to blend genres, to break rules, or even to take chances. They embrace experimentation in a way that feels refreshing when so much of the modern industry is focused on sequels, remasters, and proven formulas. And that's the heart of it. While a lot of AAA gaming became safer and more predictable, roguelikes kept pushing forward. They kept exploring new ideas, they kept surprising players. They reminded both gamers and developers that a game doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be willing to try something new. And that's how roguelikes saved creativity in gaming. By bringing back the very thing that made games magical in the first place, the freedom to imagine something different. As the gaming world keeps evolving, so will the stories and adventures we all get to experience. Thanks for watching and hanging out with me today. If you want to keep going, YouTube should be showing you my video about how the console wars finally ended, and trust me, it adds a whole new layer to everything we talked about today. So go check it out and keep the journey going. Thanks for stopping by the Gaming Corner. Peace out.